Hi, welcome to the Introstat lecture series. And we are in the unit testing hypothesis. We are still in the lecture number 7. This is the third video about lecture number 7. We are doing the hypothesis testing on population mean. For the previous two videos, we covered z-test and the t-test, right? So in the video number 2, we start to talk about what is the t-distributions. We mentioned t-distribution is very similar like the normal distribution. And also, the big differences between using the t or using the z is whether the population sigma is given or not given. Okay, or is sigma is known or unknown. So if sigma is given, then we use z-test. If sigma is not given, we're using the t-test here. All right, and so that's basically we did for the previous two videos here. Okay, so also we talk about the many different conditions of what is a t-test looks like, what is a t-distribution compared to the normal distribution. T is typical, has a little bit heavier tails, right? Then we also talk about how do we use the TI-84 calculator. It's pretty handy to help us to find the, the t values and the p values here. All right, so now the next thing is here, from the same examples here, how do we find the critical regions here? Okay, so how do I find the critical region, or how do I find the critical value here? Okay, so for the critical value from the Z table, so we have like a fixed numbers, right? So we say it's a 95%, 10%, like a 5%, 10%, or 1%. Now, what are the critical values? So what is the critical region? For the T distribution, the T distribution is depends on the sample size here, right? So in the T, we have a things we call this the degrees of the freedom. So typical we use the df to represent the degrees of freedom is equal to n-1. Okay, so this is super important, right? So in the t distributions here, the degrees freedom is is n-1. The reason why is in here we use one extra statistics, right? So this is a statistics, right? So that's why we lost 1 degree of the freedom here. Okay, so now let's take a look. How do I use the t-table? Okay, so for the t-tables here, okay, so let me go back to the to the t-table, and I'm going to show you how to in the t-tables here. So in your textbook, Appendix D, the page 65, here is t-tables here. Okay, so the t-table, the way you look at the t-table here. All right, so the way you look at the t-table, first things you see here, this is the degrees of the freedom here, right? So remember we said the degrees of the freedom is what is n-1. So do you remember like the example number 2 from our previous video, we said H0 is mu equal to the 0.7, right? And HA is mu is less than 0.7. So what type of the test is this one? This is the one side, one tail, right? One tail test here. Okay, so one tail test. Also, the problem tell us example, also the example tell us what is my alpha level. Alpha level is 10%. So it's a 0.1. So this is how do you find the critical values here, right? So because you see this is one tail, so you're looking for here the one tail. So you're looking for this row here. So let's say it's a 0.1. Oh, so you find it. Okay, where is the 0.1? So here this is a 0.1. Okay, and then you need to go find the degrees freedom. So the degrees freedom we know is n minus 1. So n here is 6, right? They have the 6 bottles. So what is the degrees of freedoms here? Is n minus 1. So what is here? So it's 5. Okay, so now I going down here, 5. What did I have here? So 1.476. Okay, so now because this is 1.476, this is my t's, right? And look here, right? So look here, this t is the 0, 0, right? So because this is less than, remember we say if it's less than, it's left tail, see here. Correct? Okay, so now I find it's 1.476. So the t, the center here is 0, but in here, right? So because the table value is give you this tail, so this one's here is 1.476, but because I am in the left tail, so what is this values here? So this critical value is what? Is negative 1.476 here. Okay, so that is what you have here, and this tells here this is a 0.1. So back to our problem. So this is your critical value, and then your test statistic is sitting here negative 0.73 something, right? So it's not in the rejection region. So we fail to reject a non-hypothesis. You see here, so this is how do you use the tables, right? So the first things you want to take a look at your hypothesis testing is one tail or two tail. Then what is your significance level? So here the significance level is 0.1. So you find it's 0.1. Then you need to know the degrees freedom. Degrees freedom is n minus 1, so it's 1.476. And because your tail is left tail, so instead of say 1.476, it's negative 1.476. Okay, did you get it? That is how do you use the t-table. Okay, so that is how do you use the t-table to find the critical value. So it depends on what? It depends on your significance level, your degrees of freedom, and which tail you do. Okay, so if it's both tail, then you, for example, if this is both tail 1.476, then here will be 1.476, then other one is negative 1.476. Okay, that's clear? All right, so this is one way to find the critical values here, just like we use the z-table to find the critical value for the z-test. Okay, now let's take a look. How do I use my TI-84 calculator to find the critical value? Because the TI-84, when we do the t-test, they give us a p-value. It does not give us the critical value. So how do I use the TI-84 to find the critical value here? Okay, so now let's stop here. Let's go to my TI-84 here. Okay, all right. So now for the TI-84, so here, let's take a look. Let's turn the calculator on, clear. Okay, so in order to find the critical value, the first things you do the second, all right? And then here, you see the VARS, VARS, the top is DISTR. So I hit here. Okay, I want to find the distribution. Okay, so you go, now in here you go, you say inverse T. Okay, so inverse T. Okay, so now you want to find the area. Okay, so what is the area? area, this is what? This is your alpha values here, right? So for these ones here, the alpha is what? Is a pointer, what? 0.1, correct? So this alpha value is a 0.1 here. So what you do here, you will say, okay, I'm clear that out, right? So I clear this out. So area is a 0.1. Okay. Then what is my degrees freedom here? Is n minus 1, right? So the degrees freedom here, remember that the degrees freedom is what? Is n minus 1. I have a 6, right? So it's a 5. Okay, so now you go, you say, okay, now you can calculate what is the critical values here. See here, right? So let's exactly give me the same values is negative 1.475. So this is the same value as the table values, right? So it's same as the table value. Okay. All right, so here be very careful. How about if my alternative hypothesis here is mu is not equal to 0.7? So now what I have here, I have a two-side, right? I have a two-side test. So if the alpha still is 0.1, okay? Now, okay, so let's take a look. How do I do this one here, okay? Okay, so these ones here, we need to be very careful. Let's clear that out. Let's try to one more time. Second DISTR. Okay, now we go to inverse T. Because right now this is two side. So each side, what is the area? Will be 0.1. So what is the area here? Because this is a two side, right? So the area will be equal to what? It's a 0.1 divided by 2, so it's a 0.05, right? Because it's a two side, you have like, because the two side, you are doing like this, right? So you're doing like this. So that's why you want to find the tail area. So that's why you divide by, so that's what you divide by 2, so it's 0.05. Okay, so here you say 0.05. The degrees freedom still is 5. Then let's see what do we have here. So it's a negative 2.015. Okay, you get that? All right, so these ones here, so remember, right? If one side, then the tail area will just be equal to alpha. So if it's a two side, what is your tail area? Will be the alpha over 2 here. Okay, all right, so that's how do we use the TI-84 calculator. So here, try to find the critical values here. So let's go back to our lecture notes here. All right, so let's see if we can write it down or something. Okay, so this is to do the test, right? Okay, so now let's take a look here. How do I find the, okay, so now let's see here. How do I find the critical value? Okay, so how do I find the critical values here? So the critical value I'm finding, so first you can use what? You can use the T table, right? In the book, right? So from your textbook. Or, you can Google, you can find a T table, in the internet everywhere. Okay, then other one, how do you find it? Then you can use the TI-84 calculators, right? So do you remember the what is the keyword for the TI-84 calculator? First, you do second, right? Then you go the DISTR, this all blue color, correct? So after you find DISTR, then you going down, what do you find here? You find the inverse t, right? Then you input your area. So be very careful, like we talk about the area. So when you input the area, if it's one-sided test, then your area will be the significance level. If it's a two-sided test, then the area. So when you input, right? So here, let's see here. So this one, see here, if it's one side, then what is here? So the area will just be equal to alpha. If it's a two side, then what happens here? So the area will be equal to the alpha over 2. Then of course, don't forget the degrees of freedom, right? So the degrees of freedom is what? It's n minus 1. All right. Okay. So now that's what we did by using the critical value. Okay. So the last things we want to do is, if you don't have TI-84 calculator, you want to use the R. How do you use the R to find the p-values here? Okay. So now let's go to the. Okay, so let's go to the R Studio, and then let me show you how to we get the R here. Okay, so now let me see here. The one we want to use, I did it before. I think I try to copy down the. I try to copy the. Okay. Okay, so in here. Okay. Okay, so now you can do here, right? So let me see here. You can do this. Okay, so this is what, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Oops. Okay, so XPT. Okay, so I hope this so I can copy it good. Okay, okay. Okay, so this is what you can do here. Okay, so paste. Okay, so here. Okay, so the comment, the code you use here, you can use the XPT. All right, so that you can use the XPT, then this is 0.69 minus 0.7 divided by the standard deviation, the square root of the n's, right? So then the degrees of freedom is 5. And now you want to find the lower tail or not. So in here you say, oh yes, because this is left tail, so I want to find the lower tail. You put a true here, TRUE. Okay, now let's run. Okay, so now you can say, okay, let's run it here. Okay, so that's pretty cool, right? So you will get the values here, as you can see here, right? So you see here, so that's why you got your p-value. See here, this is a 0.248. So this is the lower tails, right? So this is what? This is my p-values here. All right. Okay. So that's what how do you use the the R, try to find the p-value, and also be very careful here for when you use the R here, right? Because you find the tail value, and so if it's one side, right? So the one side, then the p-value is just equal to the tail values, right? And then if you test is a two-sided test, then what happens here? So your p-value is be equal to 2 times the tail value. It's just like we did for the normal distribution for the z-test here. Okay, and that's it. And so let's go back to our lecture number 7. Let's try to summarize it. Okay, so in here we said you can use the TI-84 or you can use the R, and the R here, the easy ones here, it will be, I think we just said is what is XPTs, right? Okay, so it's XPTs here. Okay, so you just said XPT, and then you input your values here. So in here, your value is 0.697 minus 0.7 parenthesis. Then the standard deviation is 0.01 over SQRT, square roots of n, so it's 6. Okay, and then put the degrees freedom is n-1, so it's 5. And then you can say the lower tail, lower dot tail. You want the lower dot tail because this is left-hand test. You say true. Okay, then you will be able to get your p-value here. All right, so also be careful here. So this is the same things like we say for one side here, test, the p-value will just be equal to the tail value, right? So if this is a two-sided test, then the p-value will be equal to the 2 times the tail value. Okay, so it's just like we did, just like we did for the z-tests here. All right, so that's it. And the idea, the concept, they are the same. So if you have TI-84, that's really pretty easy. You just input, they will give you the values. And so if you don't, then the R is pretty straightforward also. Okay, so that's it. So we talk about the hypothesis testing for testing the population mean. Here is one population mean. So when this population mean equal to a specific value, so remember, right, the differences on the test, z-test and the t-test. So what is the big differences? Is sigma, the population standard deviation is given or is not given. If it's given, z-test. If it's not given, t-test. And also the t-test, one thing here we need to be very, very careful is the key things is degrees of freedom. So the t-test, the degrees of the freedom is n-1. All right, that's it. And so we finally finished the testing hypothesis for one population. Then the next video, we're going to talk about the testing hypothesis for the two populations. The concept basically will be the same things here. All right, that's it. And have a nice day and talk to you later. Bye.